Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for checking out this screencast, which is focused for MyIB experienced or more frequent users and what we can really gain from this particular site and how it really supports our teaching and delivery of the IB programs, whether that's both MYP or diploma program. And what you're going to find, hopefully, is you've got access to a lot of great resources and good communities here that you can learn a lot from. As you look at your MyIB page, as has already been stated before, you might see different things up here in terms of what's available for you, but nonetheless, you should have access to your Program Resource Center and your program communities. So I'm just going to take us into that Program Resource Center briefly. And the reason we're going to go here is because, obviously, as an experienced user, you've probably spent some time on the curriculum guides. You've probably taken some time to learn a little bit more about what the diploma program is for your own subject. So for the moment, I'm going to go into DP resources because that kind of clarifies some of the key things that we're doing there. And obviously, you can get into your own curriculum pages. Now, as you spend time on your curriculum pages, this is the go-to place for all the current information that the IB is authorizing. I know that some people use different platforms, whether that's a Facebook group or some other type of like LinkedIn or something like this to get information on IB matters. But MyIB is the place where all of this is certified, vetted by the IB to make sure that this is actually up to date and current for what you need to know. So I imagine many people have done this, but obviously if I go into any one of these particular subjects, I'm going to get a broad overview of what that subject entails, but I'm also going to get a lot of support here. So not only do I have access to the guide, I've got access to review of the curriculum itself to see how things have gone. Each one of these reports can tell us quite a bit in terms of how we did in the last session versus how it's going now. There's also going to be links to additional curriculum material, so what we need to know for each of those areas and how that works within practice itself. You'll notice that you also get more details in terms of assessment, other past papers and that sort of stuff, as well as extended essay for that particular subject. So if you are new to the extended essay supervision, you can learn a lot more about how to do that by going to your subject-specific guide, and then you can learn more as you get to that extended essay section. That's just one of those, but one key thing that you probably already do, but just to double check, make sure you're adding these things to your resources, because then it makes it a lot easier to see when you go to your main landing page. You'll notice that when you land on your page on MyIB, you have the opportunity to get to your specific resources over here, the ones that you have favorited. So that's just a quicker way to get to that sort of stuff. But on top of that, there's some other things from all these DP resources, and you'll notice you get some other stuff like latest program news. If you ever feel kind of out of the loop or like you wanted to know more stuff, obviously you can get this information here. Now the DP categorizes things by colors to make it a little bit easier. So this sort of turquoise color, that's going to be mainly for DP / career-related program. And if it's red, that's going to be for our MyIB. Now there's plenty of good stuff here in terms of like assessment principles and practices, coordinator welcome pack, you wouldn't need to look at that, but other types of videos and that sort of stuff that can be really good for introducing you, making you far more comfortable with delivering the IB. The other thing I want to look at here is when we look at all of those DP resources, there's a lot that we can actually access, and I realize that what I see might be a little bit different from what you're seeing as well, but I want to draw your attention to this learning and teaching aspect as well. Because when we look at that learning and teaching, you're going to see a couple of cool things. First off, are the guidelines, of course, and that's mainly for me to understand and for heads of department to know, but you're welcome to check that out. But this information is really pertinent to a lot of questions that at least I receive from staff members with regard to, what is the IB doing about COVID, for example, with lost learning and kids not being in classes? Or what's going on with like online teaching? What are some good ways that we can do that? And so the IB has already done quite a bit of research on this, and they've presented this information. On top of that, the IB is constantly recruiting researchers from different universities, specifically, Bath University, where I'm doing my studies, where they're doing a lot of program research. So it's good to check this out, where you can see some information in terms of the research that's being done for the IB specifically. You'll also notice over here, they've got a whole section on just COVID-19 resources in terms of how the IB is handling issues with COVID-19 and what's going on there. So these would be some good areas to kind of check into, and you can learn a little bit more about them. As a staff that cares a whole lot about well-being, not only of students, but also staff as well, there's some really good information here about lost learning. and what is the research actually saying with regard to that, and what have they found. So this could be a really great article to check out and understand a little bit more, and spend some time realizing, what is the IB actually telling us, and how can we as educators who care a lot about our students, how can we respond? So cool article here that sort of outlines each of those. The other thing I'll draw your attention to, and I realize that, I'm speaking to people who use this quite a bit, so you may have already been doing this, but of course is going to your program communities. So if we go back to the main MyIB landing page where you first arrived, you'll notice that you have a few options at the top. That includes the Resource Center, like we mentioned. You've got your IB Webliography, which is quite useful as well, but it's these program communities. Now, this is essentially an aspect where you can get into specific forums, and you can find out, what are other teachers of your subject doing in other areas. On top of the conference that we've got going on next week with the ACES conference, and you're able to work with other teachers in DP and MYP schools in Europe, you can also access these featured discussions, and they're going to focus on each specific areas. So you could be looking just at COVID-19 updates if you want. You can also see who's contributing here as well. Now, for those, obviously you might be wading through quite a few questions, but you may notice that there's a lot of questions that get answered for you, and they organize quite a bit of it up here for you as well. So you can specify specific groups that you want to be looking at. You can also specify, like, if you want to be contacting IB Answers directly. Years ago, it used to be that you had to go through the DP coordinator in order to access IB Answers, but obviously you can do that directly now just by going to IB Answers there as well. But I would highly, highly recommend, before you do that, make sure you're really confident with your own subject guides. And again, to do that, you go to your DP resources and you select whichever one that you're studying. So let's say I'm doing some of the economics at first assessment from 2022. You notice that this guide is now set up a little bit differently from the one that we saw on the bio page, and that's because each of these are updated as often as they can. But what they've done is they've included quite a few resources that are set in video to make that easier to look through. So today might be a good opportunity to look at those videos. You can see a lot of teacher support material. Unfortunately, I came across some colleagues who had never come across that support material prior to trying to teach the IAs. So highly, highly recommend this when you're going to deliver your IAs and you want guidance from the IB and how to do that. Go to MyIB, go to In Practice, and go to that teacher support material. You're going to get tons of good information from that, not only in terms of like unit planners and approaches to teaching and learning of that particular course, but you're also going to be getting information for like the internal and external assessments. If you look at internal assessments and how you can do those, you're going to be getting lots of good ideas here. Not just like how this all works, but you're also going to be getting opportunity or getting access to previous work that's been moderated and has comments already added from IB moderators to clarify how that's going to work. So I know, again, I'm speaking to people who use this quite a bit, but for your frequent user, hopefully I've outlined a couple of good tips and some things that you can find when you look at your MyIB each time. The key thing is MyIB is a great resource. It can really inform our teaching, it can help student learning, and it can ultimately allow us to deliver a really great program. So I just highly, highly recommend access MyIB, make it a habit to get onto MyIB at least once every 2 weeks or so, because that'll give you a lot more information, help you feel a lot more informed in terms of delivering your content. Hope that helped with clarifying a little bit of how you can use MyIB to inform your own teaching and your student learning. And if you have questions, as always, get in touch and let me know. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.